everybody, this is the end of this video, but before I start this video, I just want to let you know that there's quite a bit of cussing in this video. I know some of you do not like that specific dialogue, so I really do recommend exiting out of this video just if you don't like cussing, because as by the name of this video, there is quite a bit of cussing, so yes, just a fair warning. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you at the end. Bye! Hello everybody, my name is Sabrina and welcome back to my channel. I have purple hair now, and today we're going to talk about books that made me say, what the fuck? In the good and the bad ways. Let's get started. So let's talk about books that made me say, what the fuck, in good ways and bad ways. And I say good ways and bad ways simply because there are some books that make you say, what the fuck? Like you're like, none of that was needed. And then there's books that make you say, what the fuck, in the way that it was a good thing that happened, or it was like something that was a learning experience for not only you but the person in the story. So I know we all have read them, so let's talk about the ones that have made me say what the fuck. The first book that's made me say what the fuck, Mexican Gothic by Sylvia Garcia. So I read this book for my book club. You can find that live video on my channel. Let's talk about this book. This book follows a girl who goes down to, I believe, mid-southern Mexico to see her family because her cousin, I believe, has been cut off from basically the world by her husband. So if you hear this chair squeaking, it needs some WD-40 like so bad, and I don't want to stand today, so that's why you might hear a little bit of squeaking. But she ends up going to Mexico to see her estranged cousin who has been cut off from her since she got married. And there is some freaky shit that like involves mushrooms and like murder, and it is one of those books that I swear on my life I could not stop thinking about, because I was like, what is happening? I have two little markers here, and I have no idea what they're for, so I am going to open it up and we're gonna find out. Okay, hold on, this is the next page. Okay, so I'm going to read you a section out of Mexican Gothic. It is page 206. Now, if you don't want me to read this and you don't want to hear it because of spoilers, or you haven't read it yet, just kind of skip forward a couple minutes. I don't want to be able to spoil anything for you, but if you're watching and you have not, I have hair in my mouth, you have not read this book and you want to, just kind of skip forward so I don't ruin anything for you. So it says, Doyle, she's seen him stumbling around, his face worn down by disease, but now he looks so hardy she almost confused him with another man. His vitality was restored. One would have expected him to return home at once, but here he was, lingering, running a hand down a woman's naked back. They've married, following the custom of her people. Naomi felt his disgust as he touched the woman, but he kept a smile on his face. He must dissimulate. He needed them, needed to be accepted, needed to be one with those folk. For only then he could know all their secrets. Eternal life. It was theirs for the taking. The fools didn't understand it. They used the fungus to heal their wounds and preserve their health, but it could be so much more. He'd seen it. The evidence was the priest they blindly obeyed. And what he hadn't witnessed, he'd imagined. There were such possibilities. The woman, she wouldn't do. He'd known that from the start, but Doyle had two sisters, back in his great home, awaiting his return, and that was the trick. It was in the blood. It was in the blood. The priest said so already. And it could be in the blood, it could be in their blood too. Naomi pressed her fingertips to her forehead. The headache had grown stronger, and her vision was blurring. And honestly, this book, if you really want to be left thinking, what the fuck just happened? This is the one. I did really enjoy it though. I thought it was a lot of fun. I thought it was weird enough for me to be like, all right, I understand what happened. I understand how it happened, not how it started, but how it happened from like the moment our character entered the scene. And it was just good. All the other, would recommend. It was fun. But it was just fucking weird. By the way, I'm wearing a Dale Jarrett shirt, and if you don't know who Dale Jarrett is, you're missing out. My family was NASCAR obsessed as a child, so every time I see a NASCAR shirt at Goodwill, I buy it. The next book that made me say, what the fuck, was The Family Upstairs by Lisa Jewell. Now, if you haven't read this book, you need to. This book follows a girl who was left, she was adopted, I believe, at a young age. This is like one of the first books I read on BookTube, so I'm trying to remember. And she begins to kind of uncover the mystery of her adoption, like where her family went, where she came from, because she doesn't really know. So yeah, I believe she gets a PI. Honestly, I loved this book when I read it, and now that it's been so long since I read it, for some reason my brain cannot comprehend what I read. So yeah, so I think I'm gonna do the same thing, just skip to a page and read out of it. Okay, so this is from page 81. As usual, if you guys don't want to hear me read it, you can skip a couple. It's all bizarre, you see. When I was adopted as a baby, I was nearly a year old. The house in Chelsea, it belonged to my birth parents, and according to this article, I was born into a cult. The word sounds horrible leaving her mouth. It's a word she's been trying her hardest to avoid using, to avoid even thinking about. It's so at odds with the pathetic fantasy she spent her whole life wallowing in. She sees Ditto bristle slightly with excitement. What? A cult. According to the article, there was all sorts of cult in this house in Chelsea. Lots of people lived there. They were living Spartanly, sleeping on the floor, wearing robes. Yet, she reached in her bag and pulls out the printout of the article. Look, this was my mom and dad, 6 years before I was born, at a charity ball. I mean, look at them. So, 1,000,000% would read this. It wasn't that much of a spoiler, I guess, what I just read, because it does say, like, in the description, kind of, it is cult based, and I really love cult based books. So if you have any recommendations on books that are heavy in cult, not like witchy cult, but like actual like families of cults and stuff like that, I would really love to read them. So yeah, this book really made me say, what the hell? It was one of those books that I couldn't stop reading. I think I read it in like a day and a half, and it was just so good. Okay, the next book that made me say what the fuck was The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. So this book, I'm sure as you all know from the viral TV show, it is kind of a shift in reality where a totalitarian society takes over because of infertility. So they kind of force women who are fertile to be surrogates for wealthy and like highly respectable members of society. And it's definitely this world where women are controlled, and it's a very scary thing to think about. And I think one of the main reasons why I wanted to put this on this list was the whole situation and the world, and like the world building and the reality that is in this book is terrifying. And I think that's why I really wanted to put this on this list, because it is a book, when you read it, you're like, what the fuck? Because you can't help but feel like, oh my god, like there's no way this would ever happen. But like deep down, especially as a woman, I'm like, oh my gosh, like this really could happen. And that's why I wanted this on this list. So moving on, this is a very hard book to read. I really would recommend it. This isn't really a book I can read, because you really wouldn't understand it unless you actually sat down and read it. But let me see if I can read like the intro. Hold on. Oh, this book is like not turning. These pages on this book are like super thin, and it's really hard to turn. Okay, so I'm going to read you the first page. As usual, if you want to skip ahead, you're more than welcome to. We slept in what had once been the gymnasium. The floor was of varnished wood, the stripes and circles still painted on it for the games that were formerly played there. The hoops for the basketball nets were still in place, but the nets were gone. A balcony ran around the room for the spectators, and I thought I could smell faintly, like an afterimage, the pungent scent of sweat, shot through with a sweet taint of chewing gum and perfume from the watching girls. Felt skirted, as I know from the pictures, later in miniskirts, and then pants, and then in one earring, spiky green streaked hair. Dances would have been held here. The music lingered, a pompless of unheard sound. Style upon style, an undercut of drums, a four-lean wail, garlands made of tissue paper flowers, cardboard devils, a revolving ball of mirrors, powdering the dancers with a snow of light. There was an old sex room and loneliness, an expectation of something without a shape or name. I remember that yearning for something that was always about to happen and was never the same as the hands that were there on us then, in the small of our back, or out back, in the parking lot, or in the television room with the sound turned down and the only pictures flickering over the lifting flesh. We yearned for the future. How did we learn it? That talent for instability. It was in the air. It was still in the air. An afterthought. As we tried to sleep in the army cots that had been set up in rows with spaces between so we could not talk. We had flannel sheets like children's, and army-issued blankets. The ones still said US. We folded our clothes neatly and laid them on the stools at the ends of our beds. The lights were turned down, but not out. Aunt Sarah and Aunt Elizabeth patrolled. They had electric prods slung on the thongs from the leather belts. No guns, though. Even they could be not trusted with guns. Guns were for the guards, specifically picked from the angels. The guards were not allowed inside the building except when they called, and we weren't allowed out, except for our walks. Twice daily, 2 by 2, around the football field, which was enclosed now by a chain-link fence topped with barbed wire. The angels stood outside it with their backs to us. They were objects of fear, but of something else as well. If only they would look. If only we could talk to them. Something could be exchanged, we thought. Some deal, some trade-off. We still had our bodies, and that was our fantasy. We learned to whisper almost without a sound. In the semi-darkness, we could stretch our arms where the ants weren't looking and touch each other's hands across the space. We learned to lip read, our heads flat on the backs, turned sideways, watching each other's mouths. This is the way we exchanged our names from bed to bed. Alma, Janine, Dolores, Maura, and June. I'm telling you, for all that is holy, read this book. I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, liberal, pro-choice, pro-life. I don't care what you are, your religious, moral standing. Read this book. It will open your eyes. Yes, this book made me say, what the fuck? Basically for the reasons said above. Next. The next book I have is All of the Missing Girls by Megan Miranda. This book follows a girl whose best friend went missing, and it's kind of this progression through her adulthood and finding out what happened to her best friend. Now, this book really made me say, what the fuck? Because at the end, I was like, whoa, hold on, what is happening? Excuse me. So that is one of the reasons that I really made this book say what the fuck for me. It was just like, okay, so this book does have a lot of cussing in it, so if you're planning on reading it, and what I think is really interesting about this book is it actually goes in backwards order. So it goes from the day I believe she gets there. Hold on, my brain hurts. Yeah, but it's a lot. So let me just read a little portion. As usual, skip ahead if you do not want to hear. It started with a phone call, deceptively simple and easy to ignore. The buzzing on Everett's nightstand, the glow of the display, and too bright in the bedroom, so he kept so dark. With the light blocking shades pulled to the still and the tinted windows on the second line of defense clung the glare of the sun in the city. Seeing the name, hitting the mute, and turning my phone face down beside the clap. But then, lying awake, wondering why my brother would call so early in the morning, running through possibilities. Dad, the baby, Laura. I felt my way through the dark, my hands brushing the sharp corners of the furniture until I found the light switch on the bathroom. My bare feet pressed into the cold tile floor as I sat on the toilet lid with the phone held to my ear, goosebumps forming on my legs. Daniel's message echoed in silence. The money's almost gone. We need to sell the house. Dad won't sign the papers though. A pause. He's in bad shape, Nix. Not asking for help, because that would be too direct, too unlike us. I hit delete, slipped back under the sheets before Everett woke, and felt for him beside me, just to make sure. But later that day, back at my place, I flipped through the previous day's mail and found the letter. Nick Farnell, written in familiar handwriting in blue ink, and the address filled in by someone else, with a different, darker pen. Dad didn't call anyone. Phones made him feel even more disoriented, too far removed from the person he was trying to place. Even if he remembered who he'd been dialing, we'd slip from his mind when we answered. Nothing more than disembodied voices in the ear. I unfolded the letter, a lined journal page with jagged edges, his handwriting stretched beyond the lines, veering slightly to the left as if he'd been racing to get the thoughts down before they slipped from his grasp. No greeting. I need to talk to you. That girl. I saw that girl. No closing. I called Daniel back, the letter still trembling in my hand. Just got your message, I said. I'm coming home. Tell me what's going on. Read this book. My camera's gonna die. Love that for me. BRB with a new camera bed. Might be in a tiny different position, but let's finish this video. So the next girl that made me, the next girl, ooh, what the hell did this come from? Okay, the next book that made me say what the fuck was Such a Good Girl by Amanda Morgan. So this book follows a girl who is a perfect girl, has her whole life planned out, really likes her French teacher. Yeah, this book really made me say what the fuck, and I'm not even gonna read you a section out of it because it will ruin it, but please just read this book. It will literally, like, at the end you'll be like, baby girl, what? Dorky, be careful! My cat is getting round and she continues to try to jump on things where she almost falls, and it stresses me out, and that's just what happened. Anyway, please read this book. And the very last book I have on this list is The Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds, the graphic novel edition. This book follows a boy whose brother just died from gun violence, and in the way kind of his gang works, is if someone killed your friend, you have to kill the person who killed them, and it's kind of a never-ending cycle of murder. And I think the graphic novel is very much more emotional than the chapter book is. That's why I really stated the graphic novel. It has like all these beautiful graphics in it, and it definitely gives you a like more of a kind of image of what's happening and how to feel about it. So definitely would recommend that one. Definitely put you. Alrighty, without further ado, that is gonna be the end of this lovely video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys enjoyed seeing all the books that made me say what the fuck. I'm sure you guys have books that have made you say that as well. Make sure you comment below and tell me if you guys like this video, and I will see you guys in my next one. Bye!